Hello everyone and welcome to QualityOldHomm. Today we are making another tier list, this time from tier 3 creatures in Heroes of Might and Magic 3 in the Horn of Abyss expansion. And the units are rated on kind of scenario or campaign setting, so in addition to fighting capabilities, also the cost and requirements are taken into consideration. And behind this tier list is my series How Good Is, units where the units are pitted against several opponents and also those requirements and costs are taken into consideration, so that affects in the background quite a bit. But without further ado, let's begin. First we have whites, and I mean, perhaps in some minuscule battles the regeneration ability can be rather nice, but that's pretty much it. So the unit has rather bad stats. It's slow, relatively slow, even though it can fly, but yeah, I think it's rather bad, so I will give them D tier only. And then we have the upgraded version Wraith. I mean, the fighting capabilities are not that much better, however the speed is increased a bit, and then it has that, I don't remember the exact name for the drain mana or something like that, so the ability to steal enemies' spell points, or rather capture it or take it off. So that's relatively nice, and because of the higher speed it can actually do something in battle, so I think I will give them C tier based on this. So mostly because of the higher speed and the ability to drain mana. Then we have water elementals. I mean, yeah, the unit is, in my opinion, rather clunky. So it takes 2 hexes, it's relatively slow. Then again, the stats are rather okay, but in my opinion, it doesn't quite do enough to make the unit actually good. So I would give them a C tier, perhaps a bit better than Wraiths, but nothing to write home about, in my opinion. Mostly because of the slow speed, and the fighting capabilities are not actually that good, in my opinion. Then we have Wood Elves, missile unit actually first in this tier list, and well, I think as with other missile units, quite often the value of the unit decreases as the game progresses. So, especially in the early game, these units can be actually quite good, but in the late game and, in my opinion, even in mid-game, their value begins to drop quite drastically. And of course, the upgraded variant shines quite a bit higher than the basic Wood Elves, so I think I will give them only C tier because of the fact that they are not that good in mid or late game, and furthermore, you should conserve the units to get the upgraded variant because it's so much better. So I think these guys don't deserve higher than C tier. Then we have Ice Elementals, upgraded variant of Water Elementals, another shooter. I mean, the unit is kind of interesting, and in some cases it actually, instead of upgrade, it feels like a nerf. So this is a ranged unit, and then it receives a melee penalty. So it's kind of a situational if this is an upgrade or a downgrade. Of course, it can cast protection from water, that's nice, and as a missile unit, especially in the early game, perhaps to some degree in mid-game it can do rather well, but in the late game, perhaps the upgrade will actually become a liability. Nonetheless, I think the unit has performed relatively solidly in the test, so I will give it weaker end of B tier, somewhere around here, but B tier it is nonetheless. Then we have Grand Elves, and as I was talking about upgrading the units, so the double shot is really nice. The unit is quite a bit faster, so that's really nice as well, though even these upgraded variants are quite glass cannonish. So if the enemy can get to close combat with the unit, it's in trouble. And I think the weak melee capabilities keep this unit from reaching S tier in my books, because the utility drops at least somewhat in the later game. So I think I will give these units a really strong A tier, or perhaps I could consider a really weak S tier, but I mean, let's put it to a strong A tier for now. Let's see if I will move it a bit higher a bit later. This might actually be a bit controversial selection, but A tier it is for me. Then let's move to Griffins. Flying unit, the speed is okay-ish, and that double retaliation is rather nice. And as you can get Griffin Bastion, the growth will actually be quite impressive for tier 3. So I think the unit can actually manage rather well in battles. And because of that, mostly, it will get a low A tier. I mean, putting these guys into same tier with Grand Elves feels like a bit, I mean, doesn't feel quite right. But at the same time, based on the tests on the background, the Griffins actually perform quite solidly. So I think I will leave them into A tier, at least for now. Let's see later if I will drop them to B or upgrade Grand Elves to S. Then we have Royal Griffins, quite a bit higher speed than normal Griffins and unlimited retaliation. So that's really nice. Of course, the unit cannot survive alone amidst all of the enemies, but against a weaker enemy, or if the enemy brings some units to your side, then these guys can actually wreak quite a havoc on the enemy side of the battlefield. And once again, the Griffin Bastion increasing the growth. Of course, the requirements are a bit on the higher side for this unit, but still I think I will give them S tier. Though I have to admit at this point I'm a casual fanboy, so perhaps I'm a bit biased in this case, but in any case, S tier for Royal Griffins for me. Then we have Armadillos, the factory unit, and if there is bad factory unit, Armadillos are those. So the unit is clunky, it's slow, and it doesn't do too much in battle. So D tier for me, and clearly. And I think it's actually worse than Whites. Well, actually it's a bit tankier, but still I think that Whites can actually be of more utility than Armadillos. Then we have Beholders. In my opinion, a rather nice missile unit. The growth is rather nice, the requirements are reasonable enough unless you are playing on impossible difficulty, because acquiring all of those resources might be a pain. But nonetheless, I think I will give it B tier, based on that nice fighting capabilities, which also include no melee penalty. So that's quite important in quite a few cases, especially in the later game, because the unit doesn't lose the utility when a fast enemy unit comes next to it. So I think that's rather important. And because of that no melee penalty, it goes before Ice Elementals in my books. Then we have Bellwether Armadillos, a slightly faster variant and somewhat upgraded variant of the basic Armadillo. Still, at least for me, the basic feel of the unit doesn't improve that much. Of course, the unit will fare a bit better in battles, but still nothing to write home about or shiny in there, so weaker end of C tier for me. Then we have Kerbery. I mean, 3-headed, no retaliation attack, that's really impressive, especially for tier 3 unit. And I think that the unit's speed is rather great, even though it's a bit of glass cannon. So it falls rather easily to enemies, but still, I mean, in the tournament featuring all tier 3 units, I think I would put my money on Kerbery there. So it's a really, really good one, and I think S tier is well earned, and I think I will put it above the Royal Griffins as well. Mainly because of the no retaliation and 3-headed attack, and high speed of course. And you can get those kennels as well, or rather that extra growth per week, so that's nice as well. Then we have Corsairs. I mean, a shooting unit, not that many ammo, but if I remember correctly, these units actually do decently well in melee, as the enemy doesn't get retaliation. So, perhaps B tier? Because the unit is quite squishy and it has a small amount of ammo, so yeah, I think I will put it into B tier. So, next we have Dragonflies, actually the fastest tier 3 unit in the game and also the fastest unit of Fortress in the game, and so that speed is really important factor for this unit. Furthermore, it has nice special abilities. First, it dispels positive buffs from enemies, and then it can inflict weakness as well. So the unit can work rather nicely in one unit stacks, but because of the high speed it can actually be rather maneuverable in the battlefield as well, in addition to being the fastest unit of Fortress. So I think it can choose its targets rather nicely in battle, and a full stack of these against enemy missile units might actually be a place for these guys to shine. Of course, against slower and sturdier melee units, they don't perform that well, but then again they could use weighting quite a bit there for their advantage. So, I mean, they could do a bit better in melee, but overall I think the speed and abilities warrant their place in S tier, and let's put them around here because of the really great speed. Then we have Evil Eyes, upgraded variant of Beholder, and I mean pretty much the same unit as Beholder, except with higher stats and higher speed, and once again no melee penalty, so that's really nice, and the unit does actually perform quite solidly, even in melee against other tier 3 creatures, so I think it has earned its place in A tier quite clearly. Then let's move to Hellhounds. So the Kerbery is kind of Kerberis is an upgraded variant of this, and while the unit has relatively high speed, the enemy can still retaliate. It doesn't have 3-headed attack, so clearly minuses, and its speed, though it's rather okay, it's not that great. So I think you should be kind of saving the Hellhounds so that you can upgrade them to Kerbery. So I think I will give these guys only a B tier place. Let's put them somewhere like here. Yeah. Then we have Iron Golems. I mean, the unit is slow, and that's really its greatest weakness. In my opinion, when it can get next to an enemy, it can perform rather well. That spell damage mitigation is rather nice ability, but yeah, it's slow. That's the first thing that comes into my mind about this unit. It's slow. So, kind of defensive unit, and it has difficulties in catching enemies. Then again, when it catches them, it can do rather well in melee. So perhaps the weaker end of B tier, because it's quite a bit faster than the unupgraded variant Stone Golem, which we will return to a bit later, but yeah, some mediocre unit, I would say, Iron Golem. Then we have Mummies. Yeah. In my opinion, the unit is really squishy. those cursed temples or whichever the places are from which you can get these guys, they are not that common. And, well, the ability to curse enemies is rather nice. However, in my opinion, the unit's design is a bit cursed as well. So it really cannot hold very well in battle, and I think I will give it D tier. It doesn't do that well. The curse lifts it above these armadillos and wights into higher place of D tier, but still rather bad unit in my opinion. Then we have nomads. Once again, those nomad tents are rather far between, but when you get these guys, they can actually be surprisingly good. So the unit is relatively fast, it feels relatively tanky, and it can actually deal some damage as well. So actually one of the better neutral creatures in my opinion. And mostly because of the high speed, I think it deserves a place in A tier, which is actually quite uncommon for neutral creatures, excluding the dragons. But yeah, I think A tier. Mainly because of speed, and it's relatively tanky and can actually dish out some decent damage. Let's put it there, so that the griffins don't get too high a spot over there. Then we have stronghold creatures. First we have orc chieftains, actually, yeah. So I think if units are, or missile units are measured by cost effectiveness, you can find orc chieftains and orcs both at the bottom of that list. And I mean, they will be quite at the bottom in other lists as well. So I mean, they do get a melee penalty, both of them. They don't do that much damage. I mean, perhaps they have a bit more hit points than at least the most squishy versions of missile units of tier 3, namely the elves. But still, both the elves will kind of outshoot them rather nicely. So, I mean, I will give these guys C-. And the reason is that they actually performed in the how good is tests, so that they did earn their place here. Otherwise, based on my gut feeling, I would give them D, but I guess that testing kind of forces my hand here to give them C. And then we have orcs. Yeah, and they will go straight to D. I mean, they are slow, they don't do that much damage, they cannot take that much damage, and I mean overall they are relatively bad. So D tier it is for me. And there are not really that much saving grace for them. Even though the Orc Tower doesn't cost that much, but still the unit quality is that bad compared to others. For instance, Wood Elves or Beholders, that I will give them D. Then we have Pirates. I mean, they can shoot, that's always nice. And they don't suffer melee penalty. And I think the enemy has no retaliation. However, they have only 4 shots. And they are rather glass cannonish. So, because of that, I think I will only give them C tier. I'm just wondering, should I give them above or below Wood Elves? I'm not actually certain. Well, perhaps I will put them below Wood Elves, because the lower amount of shots available for them. And then we have a rather interesting unit, so basically upgrade from an upgrade. So first you go to have a pirate, then corsair, and then you can have sea dog. The unit is quite pricey, but once again it has no melee penalty. The enemy doesn't get retaliation, and it has, if I remember correctly, 12 shots. And those shots can be accurate shots, so if you can hit enemy tier 7 creature with high enough number of these guys, they will actually inflict bonus casualties like Mighty Gorgon. Perhaps to a lesser degree than Mighty Gorgons, but still, if you can take enemy dragon down with some of these units, it's always rather nice. So, I mean, the downside is that the building chains is rather expensive, and furthermore, the units still are rather squishy, so they get taken out relatively quickly. But then again, that no retaliation is nice, and those accurate shots are rather nice. So I think I will give them S tier over here. Mainly based on the abilities. The unit stats per se are not that great, but those abilities are. And the unit speed is, well, I guess okay-ish. Nothing too great, but still okay. Then we have Serpent Fly. I mean, relatively fast flying unit, can cast Dispel on the enemy. Available relatively early, in my opinion. So, and of course that flying is always nice, and the speed is okay, so I think I will give it strong B or weak A. Actually, based on the testing, it would deserve a place in weak A. But then again, I'm considering that in that test you can abuse the AI stupidity when the AI is defending a castle, so it won't be going after the unit. So that kind of gives the unit a bit of a bonus. I think perhaps strong B might be a bit fairer than weak A. So strong B it is. And then we have Stone Golems, the last unit. Well, it's not going to go to the last position, but not quite far from that either. I mean, when the unit gets into battle, it's not horrible, and that decrease to spell damage is nice, but the unit is so slow. I mean, 3 movement points, it will slow down your army. It cannot get to enemies. Even some enemy missile units can kind of dance around it and shoot it. So, for example, High Elves. These units cannot practically catch High Elves at any point, and then the High Elves will move and shoot and move and shoot and move and shoot, and then there are no more Stone Golems. So the unit is kind of a disappointment, and in my opinion deserves nothing more than D tier. At least even Orcs have some utility, because they can shoot. I'm not sure about these. Let's put it that way. Yeah. So, this is my view of tier 3 units, and I think I will keep Royal Griffins there and Grand Elves here, because of the high speed, unlimited retaliations, and the rather squishy nature of the Grand Elves, which kind of limits their usability at the end game. So, this is my view. Do you agree or disagree? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you like the video, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Have a great rest of the day. QualityOldHomm out.